WVU defensive coordinator Zac Alley post-spring game. Let's get to his comments. First up was Zac Alley, his thoughts overall, out of the spring game in particular and the spring overall.
The spring game's obviously fun because you get to see guys play and go out there and compete a little bit. See who can make plays, who can't, who can make tackles when it's live fire, and hopefully a little bit of pressure, that you can feel in the stadium and the environment, day in and day out. So I do feel like, as a group, we've made a lot of strides since they got here in January. We had a lot to learn, a lot of guys learning how to play, how to practice, how to be at this level. Developing leadership and competitive depth, all of those things are important. We're on the process of doing that. And, the nice part of this year is you don't lose half your team here in about 3 weeks. So hopefully the development, those things that have happened from, January to now will translate as we move into summer and fall camp too.
Yeah, let's continue on with that thought. Zac Alley talked about knowing exactly who you will have. There's no spring transfer portal for football, so from this point who you will have all summer and into fall camp.
Like I said, just maintaining the guys that are on the roster makes you feel a lot better at what you can do well and what you can't do well. I think that last year, I think there's another new 41 players or something in the summer. So you were building your team again and fall camp, trying to figure out who could do what everybody was good at, what roles you wanted them to play, how you were going to use them. And so I think there's a lot more continuity, leaving spring ball this year with just some understanding of who we have and how we're going to try and use them in the defense.
And, Brad talked a little bit about it last night, and you certainly look at it from the coach's side of things, and it's a huge plus that there's stability and they know who they're dealing with. But from the player side of things as well, you also know exactly what you're doing in terms of you can look around, where do I stand on this team? How much playing time can I get? Because there are not going to be other players coming in that are going to move over top of you on the depth chart. You got what you got on both sides of things. And I think there's a comfort level for both sides in terms of players and coaches. And you still have the winter portal period that allows those that want to move. But slows down a little bit of this, just the chaos we've seen in the past.
And all the coaches talked about making things simple in terms of the scheme in order to evaluate players. That was the most important thing this spring, and Zac Alley says that worked. He and the staff, they were able to evaluate all the players this spring.
I think you're always, at least as a play caller, you're always trying to figure out where do you put the stress. There's always stress on somebody. And the more you can put stress on the good players and the better players, generally the better you're going to play. So I do feel that, we have a lot of guys where I know where I can put stress on them and I know what they can do right now. And, I think we've improved a lot, just the continuity of the play calls, the continuity of the guys, and it's a little thing, but just having a guy like a Ben Cutter back and a Nick Taylor, guys who've played in the system, well, that helps everybody because they're confident, and they know what to say and how to call things out, and they know how to get the other guys lined up, and so that even though there was a decent turnover on the roster, it wasn't everybody's new and trying to learn. It was okay, hey, this portion of guys is new, but then when they're in the meeting room and I'm not in there, when they're sitting on this and they're in there by themselves, well, Ben Cutter can go, hey, no, this is why you should play it like this, because he's been in the system. And so I think there's some carryover that just happens by having guys back who've been around that do well, that help, encourage everybody who's new. And so I feel like there's been a lot of learning and growth and development, particularly the last about 5 practices.
So, again, development continuing. It was a good spring for evaluation.
Yeah, and an opportunity. And like I said, they've got a few guys, not only Nick Taylor and Ben Cutter, but a couple up front, and Nate Gabriel and Corey McIntyre, also Keyshawn Robinson on the back end, guys who've played and have been in the system for over a year now, where, this point last year you didn't have everybody. And then the other good thing about the no, transfer portal in the spring and keeping what you got, West Virginia had almost 40 new players come in the summer last year. So they didn't even have a spring practice under their belt to learn the system. There's a lot of turnover still and a lot of new, faces on this year's team. but a vast majority of them will at least have gone through a spring practice with West Virginia and have an idea what they're doing, at least much more so than last year.
You mentioned Keyshawn Robinson, in-state product. Did he move up to the top of the depth chart?
I think he's definitely going to fight for it. You know, he's been a really good special teams player in his first 2 years at West Virginia, and over the course of last year, started to get more and more run with the defense, and mainly at safety as the year went along. But he's a natural corner,
yeah,
and he was more at corner throughout the spring, and I think he's very much in fight for a spot in the rotation at corner, whether it's starter or a guy who plays a lot there. He is very much in contention for that playing time.
All right. He also mentioned in that last cut Ben Cutter, who is a solid veteran returning linebacker in the middle of that linebacker core at the Mike position. What about the linebacker position overall?
I think we're pretty deep. I mean, we roll out there about 6 guys who can help us win right now, particularly, you know, both inside and at nickel. I mean, I think our nickel room's really good. You know, we're going to use them a lot of different ways and help those guys be successful. You know, and I feel confident in the guys we have in the room. We're still growing and developing leadership, vocal leadership, and, you know, holding guys accountable and trying to bring the level of the team up with us. That's always the challenge. It's the same as the quarterback on offense. By default, you play linebacker, you're in a leadership role. You know, and if it's not right, it's on you. It's not on anybody else. And so I think the guys like that. I think they accept that challenge. I recruited them like that. And they should know that was what was going to happen, you know, coming in here. But I think that they've done a good job of stepping up to the plate. And, you know, even some of our newer or younger guys who are in here, because they see how the older guys act, they're trying to emulate that and have that same style of, you know, accountability out there on the field.
Athleticism point.
I do. You know, I think we've got a lot of guys that help us make plays. Some guys have made really, really major strides. Cam Torber has come along. You know, he didn't play linebacker until last year, you know, so there was a lot of learning to do. But he's had a great spring and really excelled and showed out. And same thing with, you know, Malachi Hood, Isaiah Patterson, and Tyler Stolsky, all those new guys. You know, Cuts as consistent as ever. And then I'm excited to get, you know, Ashton Woods back off the injury because I think he'll be able to help us too.
All right, so he mentioned 6. So you got Cutter, Stolsky, Patterson, who he mentioned, Malachi Hood, who's in the mix to start, and Ashton Woods coming off the injury.
Yeah, he had a bad shoulder injury at BYU midway through last season and had to have an operation and get that repaired. So he was not able to practice in the spring, but he's a guy who transferred from North Carolina over a year ago that they think has a really good future. And the Torber he mentioned is very interesting. Cam Torber he's got a great pedigree. Dad played in the NFL. He's a native of Alabama, but he spent most of his youth as a basketball guy. But just early in his junior year, football coach talked him into playing some football. So first time in his life, he goes out there, and they used him mainly just as a pass rush defensive end and didn't play a whole lot as a junior. By his senior year, he's dominant and is a first-team All-Alabama high school player and starts getting offers. And West Virginia views him as a long linebacker who, with his dad's DNA, they feel that eventually. Now, again, maybe he needs another year to develop. Maybe it's not this year. But he's got that we haven't talked a whole lot about. Certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Pass rushing. That's the next comment from Zac Alley, WVU defensive coordinator. He was asked about the pass rush, and do you have guys on this team who can just go flat out get the quarterback?
I think we've got a couple of them. You know, I think that we're still trying to make strides there. Obviously, you know, we didn't get the turnover at the edges, you know, position, and I think we lost 6 guys or 7 guys that were. I mean, we had like 5 seniors in there last year. You know, just makes it for learning and developing that same type of style too. You know, I think there's a knack to knowing both how to pass rush one-on-one, and then, you know, today we had a couple where like we came inside and you can't come inside, and then now he scrambles out. You know, so a couple missed sacks and things like that were just understanding rush lanes and where to be. But I think we've got quite a few guys that can go, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, keep helping them by how we scheme things up too.
Something that has to improve.
Yeah. West Virginia wasn't good enough there last year. There were moments, but not good enough. And unfortunately, probably the biggest, and I'm not going to say the only one that they really would have liked to have had coming back, Curtis Jones would have been one of those guys this year, but he transfers to Virginia Tech, and so West Virginia out there, and they've got some guys that have played at the Division I level that they've brought in at those positions that they think can help them, but they've got to prove it.
What about the much ballyhooed Matt Sieg and what Zac Alley saw from him at the safety position this spring?
Yeah, I think Matt's done a great job. I mean, everything you could expect of a freshman, coming into a new system and all that. He's got all the athletic ability in the world, and he's been running really well, and I think he's very smart, so he plays smart. He's very football savvy. He's just a natural kid out there. Like, he understands where the ball is, the angles to take, and then he's got great ball skills and all that. So selfishly, I don't really want him to go to offense, but if it helps the team, I'm all for whatever it is. Not overly. I mean, we're very organized in what we do. So, hey, this period we want for these plays, whatever it is. So we make sure we get him the reps he needs. But, he's primarily on my side, so I kind of get first default depending on what's going on.
Yeah, so no offense in the spring?
Not yet, no. And I mean, eventually. I mean, that's a cool story for us media guys, right? You got to ask that. It was Rodney Gallagher a couple of years ago, and Rodney ended up seeing some two-way duty, and Matt Siegel continued to get that as well. But through the spring, he was a safety. And, I mean, that's going to be his primary role for West Virginia because he's a guy who's going to push to start. I don't know if he does, but I think he's got a great opportunity to do so as a true freshman. That's unique in itself. Now, then trying to throw him in and get him acclimated with a couple of offensive plays, maybe that'll take a year or two. We'll see. Maybe they try it next fall, but safety is his primary role.
One more from Zac Alley and about the group of individuals he has as people. He likes being around these guys.
I think that there's a good group of guys. I think that's one thing I'd say about our players this year, man. I have a lot of respect for who they are. I think the character of the individuals is really special. We've got a lot of guys who are bought into who we are and what we're doing. They're compelled to be here and committed to the program, and I really, it's encouraging to see that, because when you walk by the meeting rooms and now there's 5-6 guys in there on a regular basis, that understanding is coming along because they want to be in here. They want to be better every single day. We finished practice and Jameer Latimer and Andrew Powdrell beat me in the room. They're going to be up there watching film before I've even gotten up top. And that's that way they play well because they understand what's coming, and they have an understanding of the stress of the calls. So I think from that standpoint, our guys have really stepped up, and I've been very pleased with the people that are in the building.
Mountaineer defensive coordinator Zac Alley.